Hello and welcome. We are so excited to have you all join us today for this webinar on calming the chaos, parenting during times of change, during family transitions, and emerging adolescence by Dr. Julene Nolan. Before we get started, I would like to introduce myself and then share about some upcoming opportunities for families to engage with Groves. Then I'll review a few housekeeping items and introduce our presenter. My name is Linda Rose-Lansky, and I'm the Director of Outreach here at GLOW. And I have the great pleasure of working alongside our Learning Center and admissions teams. We continue to have many events to engage with GLOW and explore our academy and Learning Center. We actually have some admissions events coming up, including an open house for our academy next week on April 9th, where you can see our newly renovated academy, and we have a parent coffee on April 29th. Registration for our summer programs is also still open. And we have two more events in our GLOW Education series, including an in-person parent workshop on April 23rd and a webinar on April 30th. To register and see all of our upcoming events and programs, please visit our website. So a few housekeeping items to help us stay on track. Your camera and microphone have been turned off. Our speaker will take questions at the end of our presentation, and you are welcome to use the chat function to submit those questions. You'll notice up at the top, there's some conversation chat bubbles, and you can click those to enter questions, and I'll help moderate those to stay on track. Now, I'm very pleased to introduce our amazing presenter, Dr. Julene Nolan, President and CEO of Phoenix School Counseling. So take it away, Dr. Jules.
Thank you so much. Yes, and I'm happy to go by Dr. Jules. That's what most people call me. I own a company called Phoenix School Counseling, and what we do is put counselors into non-public schools in the Twin Cities and Greater Minnesota. And recently, because of great feedback from parents inside and outside of the school, we have started offering more things to parents who maybe don't attend the schools that we serve. Right now, we serve 75 schools in Minnesota, and I employ about 65 counselors. But we also now are offering through our website things like parent coaching. We have a summer program for developing social and emotional skills, emotional, behavioral, and relationship skills for kids in elementary school. We offer school choice evaluations and a number of other consultation sorts of opportunities. So happy to talk to you or any of your friends if you have people who in your life who are dealing with some parenting issues and would like a little bit of help, where you can go to phoenixschoolcounseling.com and find out more about what it is that we offer. Today, I'm going to talk about calming the chaos, parenting in times of change. And we know that life is full of chaos when you're a parent, right? But there are some real specific and some real general times when the chaos comes. Chaos can come from co-parenting if you're in a divorce or separation situation and you need to figure out how to co-parent. When there is loss in the family, a grandparent dies or a puppy dies or a job loss or a friendship loss when there's loss in the family. If you have to relocate, if there's conflicts within the family, some financial strain, schedule disruptions, and then misbehavior at family vacation and holiday times. So I'm going to talk about some specific things and kind of cover that content in an overview sort of way with some really specific scenarios. But if you have things in your life that you would like to talk about, transitions that are going on in your family, please feel free to put them in the chat and we can talk about them after. We know that this chaos happens at specific times in our household, and often it happens during transition. And if you think about just the day in the life of a parent, I'm talking about the transition to get out the door. I'm talking about the transition to get into the school building. I'm talking about the transition when they get home from school. I'm talking about the transition for bedtime. And also in a more global way. I'm talking about these big things that families can face. So I'm going to offer some specifics and some generalizations about this kind of stuff. Think of this as a survey class in college, like an overview of the kinds of things, but with really actionable and specific things that you can do, tools that you can take home as a parent and try today if you're finding issues with these kinds of things. Here are the guiding principles about times of chaos, times of transition, and how to parent during those times. Remember that you are the most important model to your children, even in adolescence, even when it seems like they are allergic to you, even when they say, "Oh my God, please stop talking to me." You are still their most important model. And the way you present yourself, particularly in times of stress, is the most important factor. Now, when I say that, parents will often say to me, "Oh my God, so what I typically do as a parent is when I'm stressed out or when I get overwhelmed, I yell and scream." And I know, Dr. Jules, what you're saying is no yelling and screaming. And what do I do now? And I often say, "Well, you've wrecked this batch. Go ahead and have more." Not true. What I say is, everything that happens in your parenting, every single thing is an opportunity to teach them something. Maybe it's an opportunity to teach them how to make a mistake and say sorry and start over. Maybe it's an opportunity to teach them how to, when they're feeling really elevated, calm themselves. Maybe it's an opportunity for you to model a healthy coping mechanism when your family is under a lot of stress. So even when you make mistakes, even when you act in the way that you wish you hadn't, you are providing opportunities to your kids. Even when they experience things that you really hate to see them experience, rejection, disappointment, loss of a friendship, working really hard on something and not getting a good grade, being frustrated. Even when that happens, those things we tend to want to save our kids from. As a parent, if you can reframe the lens through which you look at those issues as opportunities to teach them the skills that they need to grow up resilient adults, then you will be doing your very best parenting. So remember that you model emotional regulation. Your reactions guide your children. I often say this, you know, you want your kid when they are a teenager and older, you want them to be able to call you when they're in trouble. You don't want your kid to be the kid that says, I'm at a party and now there's drinking and now somebody has passed out from drinking and some parent needs to be called and I can't call my mom or my dad because he freaks out if I don't empty the dishwasher. Like he has no idea this kind of stuff goes on. So if you freak out when they don't empty the dishwasher, when they leave their backpack on the ground, we were just talking about how frustrating it is when you clean their laundry and put it in their room and then they pull one thing out of the stack of laundry and everything else is on the ground. And now you have to wash all that laundry again, how frustrating that is. When you freak out about stuff like that, they tend to see you as emotionally vulnerable and they want to protect you from the real stuff of life as they get older. And so they'll tend to stop telling you the truth when that kind of stuff happens. So be real careful. And I say, just use the stop technique. It doesn't work every single time. Of course, there's going to be times when you make mistakes, but stop, take a deep breath, observe what's happening in your body, and then proceed. Think about how you want to react in this situation. And if you can just put a moment between the chaos of the event and how you react as a parent, if you can just take a breath and put a moment in there, then you're going to be able to proceed in a way that is not only helpful for your kid, but models to your kid what it is you would like to see in them. And then it helps them build that skill. Remember that our most important job as a parent is to keep them emotionally close to us. And that seems to be pretty easy when they're little, but it gets more difficult as they turn into adolescence. When they start to go into their rooms, when they start to not listen to us, when their friends start to become more important to them than we are. our job is still to keep them emotionally close. And we do that by monitoring our emotional reactions to the chaos. Also, when we can be predictable, we offer our kids sort of the best outcomes. The research tells us that you don't have to be right. You don't have to be there every single second. You don't have to be attend every game and practice. You don't have to be there all the time. You do have to be loving and predictable. And that's kind of it. Like parents who are loving and predictable, like warm, predictable, and then ask some things from them. You can't be too permissive. Those parents have the best outcomes for kids. That's not that many things to remember to do. Loving, predictable, and demanding, a little bit demanding, warm demander, we call it. So, and by predictable, I mean you don't have to do exactly the same time every time, but your kids have to know that if they behave in a certain way, you will react in a certain way. That means that they know that if they don't pick up their backpack, that you're going to be irritated by it. They know that if they punch their sister, that they're going to get a consequence. Do you see? They know that one time you will react in the same way that you act the next time for the same infraction. So one time you don't laugh when you trip over their backpack, and the second time you blow up. You're predictable. So those are the three things you really need to be as a parent. We can create safety during times of uncertainty. And I want to be really careful about how I talk about this, because one of the things that I have seen in the 30 plus years that I've been doing this work is that we as parents try to overdevelop safety in our parenting and in our families. In other words, especially, and I see this especially true in kids who are anxious, that parents have overdeveloped this idea of safety. And so they're constantly reassuring them, they're constantly reassuring their anxious children that they are safe, that I've created safety, and then they're checking all of the time to make sure that the safety is there. We have to lighten up on that a little bit and recognize that if our kids are anxious, one of the things that anxiety is seeking is confirmation from us that they are safe over and over and over again. Now, that I want to juxtapose that to a time of uncertainty and change in your family. So when big things are happening in your family, when a divorce is happening, or when there's a move, or all of the things that I talked about in a more global, then they do need to make sure that safety and that you have a plan. They don't have to have a plan. You have to have a plan. So I'm talking about global chaos and also the little chaoses that we have in our family. And safety needs to be there during the global chaos. They need to know that the adults are working on it and have a plan. But in the small chaoses that happen in the world, they need a little bit of responsibility for keeping the calm there. And I'll talk about that a little bit more. So I'm going to give you some scenarios. I'm going to give you some specific tips using behavioral science about what to do. But let's say co-parenting through stress. Let's say that there is a family that is divorcing, and that your second grader becomes tearful when they have to transition between homes. And that can be a chaotic time, but this is an example of a small chaos, right? And a small thing that we want them to get skillful with, because their adult grown-up life will contain lots of chaos. And if what we're doing as parents during that time is trying to make sure that they are never disappointed, frustrated, uncomfortable, sad, worried, that they are always blissfully happy, they won't ever gain the skills that they'll need in order to deal with this themselves as adults. And we know that for sure what is coming for your kids is chaos and transitions. And so when you have a second grader that might become tearful, they need to know that parents have a plan. Parents can't get super upset and worried and talk badly about the other parent. Everybody knows this. They need to know that the parents have a plan and the parents are calm about it. Sometimes with a little kid, you can use a transitional object, but you need to practice what you want to see in the kid. And so I'm not worried about this. You're going to do fine. Yeah, I know you have a stomach ache about this, but guess what? You're going to be fine. You've done it before. You can do it again. The impact of predictability on reducing separation anxiety is important, particularly in the beginning. But don't mistake my message here. You don't have to be 100% predictable. And I want you to become a little bit less predictable as they get older and more comfortable with the transition, because they need to be able to know that they can manage it in the next circumstance, that they don't need the adult every single time to make sure the transition goes well. So we start with predictability, we start with comfort, we start with coordination, and then we pull it back and help them understand that that sick tummy feeling that they have, that is your worry showing up to tell you that you need to check everything again and again and again. And the more you feed that worry feeling, the worse it gets. And the more often you're going to have a sick tummy. So when you see that worry showing up, you tell your child, that's worry. We knew it was going to show up when you had to go from my house to your mom's house. We knew it was going to show up. It always does. Remember, if we check and check and check and comfort and comfort and comfort, it gets bigger. So what we're going to do is, you've got your lovey, you've got your plan, and you're okay. And you just have to tell yourself that. You can say, bye-bye, worry. We don't need you. Navigating grief and loss. Again, this is a big sort of can be a chaos thing, a big thing in your family. In this scenario, for example, and these scenarios come from, I've been working with these schools for about 30 years, and lots of things, sort of a conglomeration of things that parents talk to me about. A fifth grader who might refuse to participate in a family tradition after the loss of a grandparent. This I can see happen. It can happen at holidays. It can happen during family vacations. Lots of people have gone on spring break in the last week or so, or maybe they have some Easter plans coming up. When grief happens, what we want to do is validate the feeling without forcing participation. And this is particularly true in the middle elementary grades as they get older. So validate their feeling. I understand that you feel sad that grandpa is here, not here anymore. I feel sad as well. And let's start a new tradition. Or what part of our family tradition do you feel like you can not just participate in, but lead? And this is the important part. Kids, especially starting in 5th, 6th, 7th grade, need to feel like they have some agency over how smoothly the family runs. They need to matter in their family. And let me tell you this, mattering seems to be, the research is telling us now, mattering in their family seems to be the most protective factor for kids doing well in life. Dealing with mental health issues, dealing with the pressures of society. And by mattering, I don't mean that they are the center point of the family, that everybody, changes all their plans and does everything to make sure they're fine. Mattering means contributing to a society, in your case, a family, contributing in a way that is impactful on others. And I'm going to talk about that more because I think that's one of the sort of key points that I want you to take home today. Number one, your emotional reaction to chaos becomes theirs. And number two, the best protective thing that you can do for your kid is help them know that they matter in the family, because what they do impacts the family in a productive way. Maybe you're having a relocation. Again, this is a big chaos or a new beginning. If you have a kiddo that is struggling to make friends after a family moves, acts out during family events, you can role play with kids about new situations. You can help them by joining community events. They talk about making friends. I hear this sometimes from parents. My kid has a terrible time making friends. You don't make friends. You find friends, and you find friends, your kids find friends by exposing them to the kinds of, or putting them in the kinds of situations where they have interest. So if your kid is a superhero kid, they go to superhero camp in the summertime. If your kid is a Lego kid, you belong to a Lego club or a chess club. If they're a sportsy kid, you find your team. They find their friends by being around kids who have the same kinds of interests that they do. And so you can, if you're starting a new place, starting in a new place, if there's a move, you help them find their friends by putting them in the situations where they have similar interests, and then reminding them that no matter where we are, we're a team. Sometimes there'll be conflicts in families. And again, this is, there can be major conflicts in families, but there also can be that micro stuff, that stuff that happens every day. And again, parents are confident. They know what they expect from the children, they know what to do. Sometimes they might they might overhear us arguing about spending, or and they might express their anger by yelling at siblings. What we want to do is, in that situation, is normalize disagreements. And this is hard, I think, for some of us. It's hard in some of our families to be okay with disagreements in our families. Normalizing disagreements as part of a relationship, and then modeling healthy resolutions. This can be particularly difficult if you're in a contentious divorce. But even with family siblings, know that there's going to be conflict, and show them the pathway through it. Financial strain. Sometimes this is big chaos in our families. If our kid doesn't get what they wanted for their birthday because we're under some financial strain, parents often ask me, is it okay for us to talk about when the family is struggling financially? And the answer is yes, if you can do it in a confident way. It is normal for us to struggle financially sometimes, and not at all other times. And it is false to think that it's always going to be absolutely fine, because even if it is in your own family, chances are in your kids' grown-up family, they will have financial struggles from time to time. Now, how you manage that in your everyday life is to say, yeah, we've got to cut back right now, but we can do that. That means that we're not going to buy name brand things for a while. We're going to stop going to the movies for a little bit. We're going to cut back on our spending on things that are pleasures. The have tos is where we're spending our money, not the like tos. And teaching your kids that is part of the flow of life makes them resilient, makes them know what to expect, and makes them more confident and less anxious as they grow up. A gratitude practice, particularly true when financial strain is happening. And by gratitude, I mean just not shaming them, not saying, gosh, if I had what you have now when I was a kid, man, I would have been so grateful. You're so I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about, I'm grateful for the way coffee smells in the morning, and just demonstrate that to your kid. I'm grateful for this dog who is so funny and cute. I'm grateful for you who just lights up my life. Showing them that every single day, the things that you are grateful for. Another form of chaos that can come during parenting is maybe misbehaving during holiday gatherings. Some of us have had, visiting family over the spring break. Maybe we have that coming up. Kids who refuse to sit at the table or follow the rules during family meals. It almost never works to punish behavior you don't want to see, as well as it works to reward the behavior you do want to see. And this is particularly true. Sometimes we will get into a cycle in which you feel like all you're ever saying to your kid is something negative. You feel like every time you're talking to your kid, it is scolding. And if that is happening in your family, you really need to sort of flip the paradigm on how and when you interact with your kids. And you need to shine a light on those things that you want to see and not give so much energy and attention to those things that you don't want to see. Now, does that mean if your one kid hits the other, you're supposed to ignore it? No. You can say, hey, we don't, we use our hands for kindness in this family. You're done. Go, take a lap or whatever. But the minute the kid comes back, you give them some good or positive energy about, you came back from that really well. You used to have a harder time when I told you you were doing something wrong than you do now. You're such a sweet, loving presence in this family, and you take care of the dog. That tells me how much empathy and love you have, not followed by, why don't you do that all the time? Right? You want to bring in that, I call it sort of covert or sneak attack parenting. If what has happened in your parenting life is that the culture in your family has become overwhelmingly negative and you feel like you're nagging and saying something negative all the time, you really need to pay attention to how often you are giving them um, positive energy for the kinds of things you want to see. Preparing for the holidays, preparing for holiday schedule disruptions. This is another sort of can be a big chaos. A kindergartner who becomes clingy and cries when the routines change. Remember what I said, predictability reduces anxiety, but you also have to understand that if you have a kid who is anxious and you are predictable enough and you are calming enough and they are getting more and more anxious, what's happening is that internal anxiety is feeding off of the comfort, feeding off of your reassurance. And so then in situations like that, you have to, and I'm talking about kids who are anxious. And by the way, kids who are anxious often have parents who are anxious. In a situation like that, you have to help your kid identify what's going on inside of them. I see that your worry is showing up right now. I see that your that thing that makes you ask questions over and over again about, are we going to be here, and am I going to eat this, and is this cousin going to be there? If they're asking those questions over and over and over again, you're confirming, yes, it's going to be fine. Yes, you're safe, makes it worse. And so, this doesn't indicate that your kid has an anxiety disorder, but certainly if you flip the way that you interact with your kid by helping them recognize what that worry is and saying, we're not talking about this anymore, you know exactly what's going to happen, and you're feeding your worry, that can really be useful. Coping with social challenges, gatherings. For example, a seventh grader who isolates themselves during family time because it's boring. This, again, is what I'm talking about when I say mattering. Your seventh grader doesn't want to be around the family because they're boring. You can say, look, I get it. This is boring for you. It's boring for a lot of people. And at the same time, you're a part of our family. And at the same time, we have expectations of you. And at the same time, your cousins feel so much happier when you're there. What's a reasonable amount of time that you're going to be able to be there and be sweet and interact with us? And then give them a little bit of agency, deciding what it is they think that they can do, and help them know how much that is helps your family work together. So they need to matter in the family, not because they're the most important thing or not because they're the centerpiece of the family, but because they contribute in a way that helps everybody else. Sibling rivalry, which is intensified by stress. For example, a fourth grader starting to fight with a younger sibling, claiming they get more attention and preferential treatment. It is important for us to carve out one-on-one time with our kids. They don't need every minute of our day, but they do need one-on-one time. And one really interesting thing is that the amount of time that adults spend with, especially 8th and 9th graders, is predictive of having this sense of mattering, of having this sense of agency over their life, of good mental health outcomes, of being able to roll with it when things don't go well, of being okay in disappointment and frustration, of tolerating distress. So particularly when it looks like, as I said before, they are allergic to you and they pull away, That's the time that you really need to spend time in one-on-one activities with your kids, and it has to be something they're interested in. And so thinking about increasing the amount of time, 6th, 7th, 8th grade, even ninth grade, that you spend one-on-one with your kids. It's really important for their well-being, their mental health, and their development at that ages. And that's particularly true with everything that they are exposed to online, with regard to electronics. Maybe you all have seen sort of all the hubbub that's going on around this Netflix series, Adolescence, and the kinds of influence that kids, particularly boys, can get, negative influences that kids can get over the internet and from technology. It's really important time to talk to your kids about the things they're interested in, and make sure you know what they're doing online. Balancing academic responsibilities with holiday fun. Again, this can happen spring break. This can happen over Easter if you get some time off. The reason that I'm talking about this at all is because in a global sense, one of the things that kids lose this time of year is motivation to follow or to finish the school year strong. And I like to talk to parents about motivation and time management skills, because that's what we really are hoping to develop in our kids, helping them develop motivation and time management skills. We tend to think that there is extrinsic motivation and intrinsic motivation, right? That the intrinsic motivation, when we get satisfaction over a job well done, that one is good. And that extrinsic motivation, when we give them a treat or a recognition or something for something that they've done, that one's bad, like that's bribery. This one is good, that one's bad. That's what we tend to think. The truth is, the people who do best in life are the people who know how to use external motivators to do the things they hate to do. I have to do my taxes. I hate doing my taxes. And so I'm going to have a cup of tea and a piece of chocolate right before I do it. And I'm going to have a second one when I'm done. I talk about laundry, how much I hate doing the laundry, and I take a hot bath before and after, because I know how to use an external motivator to make sure that I get the things done that I need to do. And your kids need to know how to do this as well. Adjusting to new family dynamics after a divorce. Again, this could be a big global sort of chaos thing that happens in a family. Refusing to talk about the time, like if you have a little kid who's refusing to talk about the time that they spend in the other parent's house. One thing that we need to remember is that when a kid is going through divorce, even if the divorce is good. What's the word I'm looking for? But even if the divorce is not contentious, right? That it's cooperative and people are good to each other. A kid can feel in a situation like that an alliance to one parent or another, or an alliance to the other parent when they are in the presence of one parent. So they start to feel protective, or they might start to feel protective of one parent when that parent is not in the room. And so they can be reluctant to talk to you about what happens at the other house, just because they don't want you to feel bad. They don't want to show you how much fun they've had with the other parent. It's easy to get offended by that. It's easy to get worried by that. Avoid pressing them for details, offering them neutral, advice, like it's fine to miss your other parent while you're here. Again, you have to be really careful about speaking negatively. I have worked with families like this in the past, and one of the things that parents tend to forget is that each kid feels like they are a combination of their mom and their dad, or their parents. And if you are speaking negatively about the other parent, you're speaking to the child negatively about that part of themselves. And that is how they interpret it. So that's why it's really bad for kids to do that. I just acknowledging that they have loyalty to their other parent, and that loyalty is great. You're so pleased, and that they can express their emotions with you because they're safe doing so. Handling envy about getting gifts like birthday gifts, or, sometimes at this time of the year, if you celebrate Easter or other spring religious celebrations, kids can get gifts, and there can be envy. It's not fair. My cousin got way cooler gifts than I did. Acknowledge feelings without shaming them. And so, this, I think, is one of the more critical parenting issues that I talk about. Parenting is such a big volcano of emotion for many of us. And I think one of the things I hear parents say more often than not is, I just don't want my kid to be entitled. And we tend to think if they complain about not getting as great a gift, or if they seem ungrateful, we tend to think that if we shame them, if we say shame on you, or if we say, this kid over here gets nothing, or if we say something that elicits shame in them, that will keep them from feeling entitled, and it doesn't. And here's why. When you are feeling shame, when you are feeling like your parent is disappointed in you, so you're worried or scared or shameful, your brain does not have the capacity to learn at that moment. It isn't able to take in new information and integrate new information. And so usually what happens is the kid tries to push away shame, and the easiest tool to use to push away shame is anger. And so they might get angry with you, or they might get angry with their sister or brother or the dog or somebody else, express anger with somebody else because they're feeling shame. So what you do instead is you acknowledge the feeling. And this is transformative. It makes sense that you're disappointed. I understand. I might have felt that way too at your age. This makes perfect sense to me. I see that you're feeling disappointed with this. And at the same time, so what you want to do is let them know that you heard and understand their feeling. If you tell them their feeling is wrong, or if you tell them they are a bad kid for feeling that way, they're going to spiral in shame. If you can instead say, that makes sense. I understand why you feel that way. I might have felt that same way. Then they can hear you. Then they can hear what comes next. So again, teaching gratitude at that in that moment, maybe not in that moment, maybe later, maybe just, I understand that you're feeling frustrated about this, or I understand that you wish you had gotten something else, and change the subject. Not running into that spiral of shame, I think, is really important. Teaching them gratitude, delayed gratification fosters resilience. We all know this. And it is, we don't get everything that we want whenever we want it. I understand that you feel frustrated. And at the same time, that's what your life will be. Life includes that you don't get everything that you want just when you want it. And how is this thing that you got something that maybe somebody else would want? And help them to sort of to foster this idea of, you are perfectly capable of being disappointed and still behaving reasonably. Coping with family expectations. A kid who says they're too old for family traditions, for example, they don't want to go to a family gathering, or they think that the Sunday brunch with crepes is stupid, and they would rather be in their room. Again, part of their responsibility as a child is to show up for the family and to help out with the family. And I, as a mom, have an expectation that my kids are all going to be in the room at the same time for an hour or two on a Sunday. And you're going to participate in that because that's your job. Everybody has a job in this family. So you can validate their growing independence. I get it. You are less interested in being with us than you probably ever have been before. And at the same time, the family needs you. And I wrote down here again, mattering, because I do think that this is a key takeaway in this talk today, is helping your kids know that they matter, not because they're the centerpiece of the family, but because they contribute to the family or the community and the community in a meaningful way, and they make somebody else's life better. Throwing a tantrum at a large family gathering, overwhelmed with noise. This happens often, when you're traveling with your family, or if you're going to in-laws, we see these big behaviors, big emotions. Remember, this is when you go back to that stop, take a deep breath, observe what's happening in your body, and then proceed. Remember that you can help kids by offering them a calm place, to calm down. You can make sure to bring all their right toys and that sort of thing. But your job is not to take away the discomfort. Our job as parents is to help our kids learn how to manage discomfort, not keep the road smooth. There is a misconception that if my kid does not have a bumpy road, if I make sure that they get the best grades they can, because if they have a stomach ache one day when they're taking a test and tell me they had a stomach ache and they didn't do very well on the test, and then I call the teacher and say, could you let them do it again? They didn't feel good. While they might get a better grade, it is teaching them that they are not able to be uncomfortable and produce at the same time. And I see the outcomes of this because I work with kids from the time they're tiny children until their adolescence and beyond. I see that the well-meaning parents who have enough time and enough money, who have enough resources, who are smart enough, they have enough education, they've read all the books. Those parents sometimes will step in too often to save their kids from a disappointment or to make their lives comfortable enough. And then those kids become really, really weak, as if they could be knocked over by a feather when they get a B- on something. I teach at the university from time to time. And I had a young woman in my adolescent psychology class who brought her paper into me. It had a C on it. She earned a C, and she threw it on my desk and she said, I am not a C person. And I thought to myself, wow, your parents have never allowed you the opportunity to work hard and still not get the grade you wanted, to be frustrated with an outcome even when you gave it your best. And that's the skill that you need, because if you don't have that skill, you are going to walk away from opportunity. You will not be resilient. It will be difficult for you to do well in life, to see a challenge, to meet a challenge, and be resilient on the other side of it, if you don't practice that when you're a kid. So our jobs as parents are not to smooth the road. I say to parents often, go home and make sure your kids are frustrated and left out and disappointed and angry because they need to be skillful with those emotions. And as parents, our job is to help them navigate that, not to keep them from experiencing those kinds of things. The best thing that you can do is help your kid build self-awareness and learn those sort of emotional behavioral triggers that get them to a place where they are having a tantrum, even from the time they're very little. What I mean by that is when we have kids who have difficulty managing behavior, and particularly if we have kids who become explosive, who it seems like they're fine and then all of a sudden they've exploded. What I see there often is a pattern of adult responding to behavior when a kid starts to demonstrate frustration. They're balling up their fists and maybe they're even using curse words, or they're punching something, or they're scribbling really hard on their paper. Instead of saying, wow, it looks like you are frustrated, angry, disappointed, whatever, naming the emotion, we say, oh, stop that, you're overreacting. And we punish the behavior that is associated with that internal state. When we do that, we tend to have kids who learn how to not demonstrate their frustration and their anger in little forms. And so they push it down and push it down and push it down. And then their sort of emotional system gets overwhelmed, and then they have a big blow up. Instead, notice the small symptoms of emerging uncomfortable emotions. I see that you're clenching your jaw. Does that mean you're getting frustrated? And having kids talk about the feelings then and building their emotional vocabulary. Kids who have more words around emotion are more able to handle their emotion. They also are less likely to act out aggressively when they're having negative emotion, and they are able to calm themselves better. So instead of, stop doing that, it is, I see. It makes sense to me that you're frustrated. How do you want to manage this frustration? And that tends to produce a child who is better able to have self-awareness. And we know that self-awareness is a really great predictor of good mental health outcomes, of good behavioral health outcomes, of good school performance, good relationships, well-being, satisfaction with life. So we're teaching them self-awareness, and then we're teaching them self-management. How do I manage this negative emotion when it is happening to me? So these are the takeaways. And again, I wanted to sort of give to you a pretty broad idea of some of the parenting techniques that you can use when there is chaos and transition from big things going on in the family to little things going on in the family. I just want to remind you that, this is what I and my company does every day. We talk to parents about these kinds of things. We're not therapists. Well, I'm a clinical psychologist, but I don't offer therapy. What I offer is coaching, and as do many of my leadership team. But these are the key takeaways. Parents are the steady, calming influence in their child's emotions. Nothing is too big or scary for you. And when you react in a big emotional way to your kids' emotional reactions, they tend to find you or get worried for your sort of adjustment, and then they try to protect you from things. So you're never scared of their behavior. You're never scared of their emotions. You get calmer when they get more chaotic. Our job is to help them learn the skills to tolerate the discomfort, not to make sure that everything runs smoothly. Our children need to matter in our family, and that means meaningfully serving the whole community, the whole family, but not being the center of the family's efforts. Teaching gratitude and not shame by practicing gratitude and not lecturing. It's very easy for us to say, oh my God, if I had a quarter of the things that you had when I was your age, I would have been skipping down the road every day. You are so ungrateful. You are so blah, blah, blah. They can't learn that lesson in that moment because they're spiraling in shame. Teaching or increasing the time spent with your kids, especially in late elementary and middle school, right into high school, one-on-one time. Anxiety is best managed when you recognize it, acknowledge it, and challenge it, not when you overcomfort it. And then stress, the stress of chaotic times, the stress of being in a family, the stress of daily life is not to be avoided. Stress is not a bad thing. It is stress that is not managed. And so talking to kids about being under stress is perfectly fine. You're not trying to run away from stress. You're trying to think about healthy coping mechanisms to manage stress when you're in a stressful situation, because that's the thing that's going to serve your kid as they grow older. You can't avoid stress. And so you need to learn healthy ways to alleviate it. And so that is it for my presentation. I am wondering if we have some questions. Linda, I'm wondering if you could unmute and tell me what people are thinking about.
Yes. Oh, Dr. Jules, that was outstanding. I just really enjoyed learning with everybody. And if somebody missed and joined a little later, you're welcome to use the chat bubbles. They're located at the top of your screen to type in any questions you might have. And I know for myself, just speaking from experience, that oftentimes I might come up with a question later. And thankfully, Dr. Jules has shared with us her contact information and website. So if questions do come up at a later time, or if you have the opportunity to rewatch this or go through her slides, which will also be sent out, we encourage that reaching out and communication. I do see one that just popped up, and the question is, what is the best way to repair for the times we have shown emotional upset or big reactions to a chaos, or I'm sorry, or a big reaction to a child's very stressful behavior?
Yeah, that's a question that we get all the time, and I would say there is never a wrong time to do it, and there is never a best or worst example. You've had your kid says something to you, and you say something equally horrible right back to them, right? And we've all done this. I mean, there's no judgment here because I know how stressful parenting is. We say something equally horrible, and then we recognize that we have, and then we say, clearly, I am overwhelmed right now. I'm going to take a minute. And this is really key important here. This idea of parenting later. Often we think that we have to fix it right now. But what we're teaching the kid, remember, is not how to do it perfectly, but how to do it better, or how to do it at another time, and how to take care of ourselves in the moment. So saying, I'm clearly overwhelmed. I did not mean to react that way. I'm going to take a break, and then we can talk about this afterwards. And then take 15 minutes and parent later. That's absolutely fine. And then when the later comes, you say, look, clearly that is not how I meant to react. And I'm sorry that I did that. That is not the way that I want to parent. And I'm working on that. And at the same time, you're still grounded for whatever you did. So hold your boundary, give them the consequence, and demonstrate to them that you recognize that it's okay to make a mistake and say sorry, that you are going to, that you're continuing to work on it, because this is what we're doing in our relationships. We're continuing to work on them. But they still have to pay the consequences for the thing that they did. And in the moment, if they say, something horrible to you, and you have the presence of mind to say, whoa, 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 I don't speak to you like that. You're not allowed to speak to me like that. Frankly, that's more effective if it's true. But even if it isn't, it is a really good time to say, yep, that was a mistake, and I'm working on that, and I'm going to try not to do that again. And at the same time, you're not allowed to speak to me like that. Here's the consequence.
Mm-hmm. That's great advice, and I'm curious what the statute of limitations is on that. I'm thinking of in hindsight, my children are in their 20s now, and oh man, I don't want to. I want to give myself grace, but man, Jules, there's some amazing information that I would have loved to have had back then. And I'm appreciative to be able to share that with my nieces and nephews who are starting their family, and hopefully grandkids in the future.
Yeah, I would say that they're all going to experience this as well, right? And one thing let me just add that one thing I have seen lately in my daughter brings the social media stuff to me, which is a little bit beyond what I'm talking about. Children or young adults in their 20s now, maybe mid to late 20s, who are saying that, my mother or my father was too hard on me about XYZ, and now I have trauma around it. And the XYZ is something simple like, cleaning my room, or not eating my vegetables, or whatever. When they're that age, it's their time to manage it themselves. And you don't have to do any more apologizing for that. There's a part of society that over dramatizes what sort of natural things that happen in a family, and turns them into trauma when they're really just natural disappointments, frustrations. And we as parents get to make mistakes, and we as parents get to look at every single one of those mistakes as an opportunity. an opportunity now to show what an apology looks like, to do better next time, to show what calming myself down in the moment looks like. Every single one of those things is an opportunity. So you have to instantly forgive yourself. And that's the other thing that you're demonstrating at that point, how to stop the self-recrimination, how to stop that negative self-talk in your head. Oh my God, I did that wrong. I screwed up my kid.
Mhm.
And how to release yourself from responsibility. And you're demonstrating that to your kid when you do that.
That's helpful. Thank you for sharing that. That does give me hope. And I really did enjoy hearing about those parenting opportunities and looking at the various situations to embrace that and tying that into the modeling emotional regulation. I was so powerful. Really appreciate that. And I wrote a few other things down. I love like being loving and predictable is a great takeaway, especially during the transition examples you shared. And I wrote down normalizing disagreements and modeling resolution. And I look forward to sharing that too. So again, thank you for taking the time to present today. I saw somebody was typing in the chat, but I'm not sure if those questions are going to pop up here soon. But again, we appreciate you sharing your wisdom and for your continued support and partnership. We thank everybody for attending. This presentation and slides will be shared with you via email in the next few days and also posted on our website. Please share this information with your family and friends. We are so grateful to be a community resource, and we encourage everybody to reach out if we can be a support. And also, Dr. Nolan, do you have anything to add yourself?
Yeah, just one more thing. So I'm doing a little 1-minute parenting tips, 30-second 1-minute parenting tips on Dr. Jules Official on Instagram and Facebook. So you'll hear lots of the little kinds of gems that I just gave you and many other things. My daughter moderates it for me, so she makes me look good and sound good. So follow me there, phoenixschoolcounseling.com, or you can email me at drjulesnolan@gmail.com.
Oh, thank you again. And I hope everybody enjoys the rest of their day. And we'd love to see you at another event. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Linda. It was my pleasure.
Thanks. Take care.
Bye-bye.